So deliberate practice is not specific to psychotherapy. It's just a general way of training.
We do know no matter how you're doing it, it makes a difference. And hopefully we learn more and more and more about how to make it better.
On average, most therapists get slightly worse with more years of experience.
Can I have a moment of wanting to do a thing and then stop myself? Because just being able to have that skill is such a helpful skill to have in your back pocket when you're doing therapy.
It's really nice if we can practice it either in a role play or with video of actors pretending to be throwing challenging things at us, or tape of our own clients, but like where we're actually pretending to be, we're in our therapist, we're trying, we're practicing.
If we commit to deep practice, it changes how we can serve our people. You all, we are so lucky because Tori Olds is here.
So sweet, Jules.
Tori Olds, you're one of my very, very favorite trainers on the planet.
Thanks.
And I want to be really specific about why I was like, oh, Tori, can you come and do this? Is because of the depth of thinking that you have devoted to helping helpers help people better.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically your commitment to how do we learn to do experiential therapy incredibly well?
Right.
What is actually required? And you're a fan of deliberate practice, and I'm a fan of deliberate practice, and you teach so wonderfully about deliberate practice. So I thought, let's have Tori come in and tell people why we're excited about this thing that's been around for a long time, infusing into therapy training.
Right. Okay, great. Well, maybe I'll just start with describing it a little bit, and then you guide me. I may just keep going, and we'll talk about it.
I love it.
Yeah. So I'll kind of assume people don't know much. I mean, so deliberate practice is not specific to psychotherapy. It's just a general way of training. And it was a term developed by Anders Ericsson, who Malcolm Gladwell kind of popularized his book with like the 10,000 hour rule and all that stuff. But Ericsson is the actual researcher, and you can think of him as like an expert on expertise, an expert on how to become an expert. And so he studied peak performance or expert level of performance in many different arenas, and just found that what people do when they become expert, what they've put in hours and hours doing, is something he termed deliberate practice. So practice in general, especially deliberate practice, is when it's usually in solitude, where you really have a clear, specific skill or objective or piece that you're trying to focus improving on. It's like one thing at a time. The whole, we'll get into some of these details. It's repetitive, it's very focused, and it's at your right level of challenge. So these are some things we'll get more into. But it's really, really important, because just doing the whole thing rather than one skill at a time doesn't, and this is true for therapists, but also other fields, just doing the whole thing, they call that performance. I mean, excuse me. Yes, they call it. Yeah. I'm getting it right.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Put it right.
You're doing it exactly right. Like if a concert pianist is playing that's not practice. That is the performance. When we're in session, doing a full session, that is not practice.
It's performance, which is confusing because we call that our practice. So it's not, but it is actually performance. This is actually was kind of mind-boggling to me. The number of times a surgeon has done a surgery doesn't correlate with better outcomes.
Right. No, not at all.
Right. Or think about driving.
The number of times I've driven.
You're not getting
does not actually make me a great driver.
Oh yeah, it's not. You're not getting better.
Right. So 10,000.
Unless you're trying.
Right.
If you went to a course on driving and they taught you how to do this one move and you just practiced it, you could get better. But I just want to throw out a couple other things that are a little bit mind-blowing specific to therapy. Supervision doesn't seem to make a difference. It's a little bit variable in the research. Sometimes it does a little bit, sometimes it doesn't, but it's very variable. In fact, a lot of supervision is actually harmful. we haven't, and it seems to be, okay, so this is where our call to action that Jules is kind of saying, like, this is a call to action for our field. We seem to be one of the few fields that doesn't do deliberate practice, which is kind of understandable because our work is very private. Like, there's a lot of things that make it more tricky than like doing dribbling a basketball or playing scales. I can't sit my client down in my living room and be like, can you just sit there while I try this thing 50 times?
Totally. This is part of it, is that, it's done in isolation. Like, deliberate practice is like, the solitary thing where I'm going to practice. I lived for a little while with a guitarist who was like a world-class guitarist.
Yeah.
And I really learned about deliberate practice from him. He was playing with some of the biggest names in music, going on tours, studio work, being hired, paid immense amounts of money because his guitar skills were so good.
Yeah.
And living with him, what I learned was he practices classical guitar, like intricate finger movements 4 to 5 hours a day.
Yeah, that's insane.
But he was already world class. And I would ask him, why are you practicing? He goes, no, if I don't practice, nothing gets better. And if I don't practice, I don't keep my skills.
Right. Yeah.
I do it every day.
That's craziness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so sobering because any other group, I mean, a basketball player is doing the same thing. They're out shooting like free throws. That's super simple for them. They're dribbling. I did classical piano and I would like do scales. And I really learned this thing about the performance thing because I remember having to be like, okay, I am not going to let myself play the whole song. Like the whole song with the, I'm going to.
It's such a struggle, isn't it?
Because that was the fun part. And I was like, this everything is so boring, just one finger. And it's really, really boring. But I knew if I just kept doing the song, I was actually going to get worse. And that's the research shows that most therapists on average, and this isn't everybody, that's why we're studying it. Like, okay, who are the people that improve? But on average, most therapists get slightly worse with more years of experience. Which is,
can we slow down and just be with that?
Yeah.
Not everybody, but the reality is,
on average,
we're getting worse over time. And what's another piece that's mind-blowing to me, and I think I want to take a sobering look at this reality because I think it could be a call for us to all commit to doing this differently. It doesn't have to be this way. But over the last 50 years, therapy outcomes have not improved a whole lot.
They have at all. We have not improved in 50. And I mean, imagine if that was medicine, if we hadn't improved in our medical interventions in 50 years and our outcomes, 50 years. And to me, Jules, whenever I look at that data point, I think, okay, to me, that probably means we don't know how to train therapists, because I think therapists really, most of us come into this as a calling. We want to do good work. It's not like we're trying.
Oh yeah, nobody I'm training is dialing it in.
No.
We're here and invested and want to do really good work and want to find ways to do really good work. And it feels like to solve the problem, we're all throwing a bunch of theories at the problem instead of wondering, wait, is there something in how we're training to do our work that's a big part of this problem?
Isn't that interesting that just became conscious for us? That it really does make sense, doesn't it? If we want to have better therapists, how I always think of it is like we need better therapists, not better therapies.
Yes.
Even though it's been great. I love some of the new therapies. And I think
it's great.
Like what you're doing. It's like I think information, like the technique is, I think we've raised the ceiling.
Totally.
Haven't figured out, okay, so how do we get people there?
How do we get people there? And I want to really be clear about this, and I don't think I can say this enough. For all of you who are part of this training, the STAIR method is not actually a therapy, and it is not a model. It is a way to integrate your toolbox using a theory of mind, theory of change, and then thinking about, when we make it brain-based like that, what skills do we need? And then how do you practice those skills so that they are available to you in whatever models you are integrating through this integrative framework? Because one of you is using IFS and EMDR together, and another one of you is using somatic experiencing and Sandtray together, and another one is using all of those plus brain spotting, and they're all great therapies. And I love that you're doing this training.
I mean, I can geek out on therapies, and they are, and I do think each of them, the techniques are amazing, and practicing
Amazing.
techniques. So basically, when we're thinking about psychotherapy, we can practice techniques.
Mm-hmm.
We can practice interpersonal skills, basic kind of
Mm-hmm.
and then intrapersonal skills.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those are, sometimes I think of it like state dependent learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're just, well, let me say why I say state dependent learning. It's really nice if we can practice it either in a role play or with video of actors pretending to be throwing challenging things at us, or tape of our own clients. But like where we're actually pretending to be, we're in our therapist, we're like, we're trying, we're practicing. Because when we're just sitting back in a conference, comfy chair with our nice coffee and listening, it's just not the same brain. You know what I mean?
Your brain is actually in a different state. And so any learning you are taking in is being filtered into that particular state and not the state of therapist.
Yeah.
So for example, in the STAIR Level 2 training, when you are in one of these deliberate practice tapes and you've seen me do this session, and then we're working on that very particular skill, and my video and sound drops off, but the words are still there, you can practice the script. Or if you're ready for it, you could move on further in the tape and see my face, my words go away, and my audio go away, and all you have is the client.
Yes.
And what are you doing? You're practicing your repeats for memory reconsolidation. You're practicing your repeats. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. And you can practice your own way.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an example of what you're talking about when it comes to, oh, there's a skill I'm trying to learn that's not necessarily like an interpersonal relational skill, but it's a neuroscience-based therapy skill. Oh, repetition post-lability is important. So now I'm going to practice my repetition.
Repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition.
Does that align for you?
That aligns with what the research is finding, Jules. Yeah, because they have been researching this, that people do learn more practicing than they do just sitting. It's like we can talk a great talk about how to do therapy. It's totally a separate thing than knowing how to be a therapist, which is more operational. It's like it's a different system. It's a different, like you said, it's repetition. It's being in it's being in the state, like state dependent learning. I think there's something about it being one piece at a time, because we're just not great at learning more than one thing at a time. It's like, let me get really good at that. Like if I'm playing piano, it's just the rhythm. Or let me just work on, this hand, or, because then we're really mapping something very specific and like really bringing it to life versus trying to do 10 things at once.
Right.
But have the bandwidth to learn.
Exactly. Exactly. So if, for example, I was trying to design my own deliberate practice and I was trying to help me create therapeutically supported memory reconsolidation experiences in session, it's not so helpful if I just try to practice all the things that could potentially go in there.
Yeah.
But it is helpful to catch moments where there was potential surprise and therefore we're guessing lability.
Yes.
And then right away ask, oh, did something just shift? Oh, did you just discover something?
Yes.
Right there in that moment, what happened inside?
Yes. There's always kind of these two pieces when therapists are learning. They're learning what to perceive and then what to do based on that perception.
And for you, would you separate them out? Would you?
This is a really good question, Jules, because I can talk a good deliberate practice talk, and I don't know if I'm always great at integrating it. I'm not practicing my deliberate practice enough. To do deliberate practice, I mean, I've one of the first courses on Academy of Therapy was my course where we're doing basic skills and trying as best I could to incorporate deliberate practice.
So you say trying as best I could with I've taken the class. It's phenomenal.
Thanks, Jules.
You did a really, really good job.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. What was interesting about that class is it was focused on core skills and basics.
And sometimes people think that it's like too basic. It's not.
It's not too basic.
It's not.
It's like your husband doing the same thing. I mean, you said he was doing complex things, but I bet he was also doing really basic things.
Right.
Again and
totally.
again. Sales or
totally.
Right?
Basics.
Yeah.
what's the one move from the A to the D on the bass?
Right, exactly.
Just that one move for like 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm just getting really good at that. Yeah, it's anyway. I think it's really. I mean, it's exciting. It is exciting. So I have mixed. Okay, so here's the good and bad of deliberate practice. The bad is it's hard work, and it's not all that fun.
It's not. It's actually super boring.
Boring.
And as somebody, I actually do have a deliberate practice.
Can't wait to hear about that one.
I actually do deliberate practice, you all, with my own tape
Good for you.
every single week
That's awesome.
for, I don't know, 5-10 years now,
Good for you.
somewhere in that space. And over the years, I've gotten better at like figuring out like, oh, how is this helpful? Is it actually improving the moves, right? Over time, it's gotten better. But at this point, I'm so deeply committed to it and I can see the benefit.
No freaking wonder you're so great.
But you all, it is boring and stressful and awful. And most of the time when it's time to do my deliberate practice, I go, I don't wanna.
Like eating your vegetables. Yeah. Yes, exactly. That, and they talk about that in the community. They're like, look, this is not intrinsically rewarding, as in fun, and it's not extrinsically rewarding, as in payment or money. Like seeing clients is it's actually easier to see clients, and you get paid for it. And I'm very sympathetic to people needing to reserve their time. Life is crazy. Like we probably do need to reserve some of our time for making money, and if we can, there is obviously a huge reward ultimately. You know, it is kind of like eating our vegetables. Like it sucks. And if we see our clients doing better and we feel pride about that and we feel like we're helping more, I mean, that it may not be in the moment that like intrinsically rewarding. But I do think I've heard from people who do this over, some time, it starts to be like, it's still kind of like a pain in the butt, but it starts to be like, okay, I'm committed. I really know this, like I'm committed to it now. Like, okay, it helps.
Well, I can look at tape that I laid down 6 months ago and look at tape that I laid down 2 or 3 years ago, and I can see a dramatic difference.
Oh, that's awesome, Jules.
A dramatic difference. And I think it's because how much I practice.
Good for you. I actually didn't know that. That's amazing to know about you. I love knowing that.
Well, and I did it. Here, when it comes to knowing anything about deliberate practice in therapy and who's doing it, I actually learned that part from you. I was raised by physicians who practice stitches. I have people in my life who are musicians. And so I just kind of went, well, how do I do the same thing?
You know what they call you in the research? Super shrink. I'm sure you know that.
Oh,
I don't know if people know the super shrink research. Some people get turned off by the word super shrink, but it's a endearing origin. The first study where they were studying super shrinks was the reason they started calling it that was because it was at a children's hospital. And they were looking at the difference, and the kids were like, "Oh, we know who the good therapists are. We call them the super shrinks."
Oh, that's sweet.
People don't like that term, but I find it endearing, and because I know that. But
so tell people about this because I don't think people know.
Yes, so that is Scott Miller's research, and he was just curious about. So at one point, there was a shift in our field away from all these theories because they found that the theory doesn't matter. I mean, I'm sure there's some theories if you did really well, different. There probably are differences we haven't found yet in the research that we aren't finding for a lot of reasons I won't go into. But basically, the dodo bird effect. Like, oh, we've spent millions of dollars on outcome studies, and if we can manualize it, and all that's like been really like it. We never CBT psychodynamic, like it seems anyway. So then some researchers started saying, okay, what about the person of the therapist? Maybe it's not about the type of therapy. Maybe it's like some qualities the therapist has. So they looked at the obvious things like gender or age or years of experience or type of therapy they did, or those kinds of things, personality stuff. And nope, none of the like things on paper correlated. And so Scott Miller almost like gave up on the research. And then he read about deliberate practice and he thought, I wonder if it's just those therapists try harder, to learn. So he went, this is what he found. He found that the people, I think the top quartile compared to the bottom quartile spend 14 times as much time outside of session thinking about cases. Again, they didn't have necessarily like deliberate practice training of like, how do you do it? How do you use your time the best? But they were trying to like get supervision, think about cases, figure out what their growth edge is, ask feedback. Okay, so here's some of the things. Not only did they practice harder, but the number one quality they had was humility. That was kind of like a characteristic. And so they asked, and they developed an environment where the client felt free to give feedback. Like, I really actually want to know. Like, it's not like I'm just, don't soothe my ego. Like, tell me how this is going. And then they get real feedback, and then they would make changes. And if they need to learn something to know how to make that change, like, oh, I'm not good at this thing, they would get feedback. They think about it. They do it. Basically, they were like you, without anyone telling you, Jules, you need to do deliberate practice.
Right.
Or super shrink, basically. Right.
Right.
Not to, and so I think that's, I think the humility piece is really interesting to learn from. So then people like Scott Miller started thinking, okay, so what if he learned about deliberate practice. So he started thinking about deliberate practice. And then there's a whole team of people, Alexander Vosh, Tony Rosmanier, who I'm friends with both those guys, and they're doing awesome. And they have an amazing university, by the way, if you're not a therapist and are thinking about becoming a therapist, called Sentio University in California. And it's the best, it's only deliberate practice. I mean, those are two of the main researchers on it. And Tony wrote the book on, they're amazing. And their program in California is amazing. But Sentio, and if you go to their website, sentio.org, maybe, Sentio University, I can't remember exactly what the website is, but just look up Sentio, Sentio University, has a ton of deliberate practice, open source. They're very into being open source resources. So you can use their videos. We have a lot of videos on how to do deliberate practice and that kind of thing with different, psychodynamic or this or that. But they have great just actors playing all sorts of maybe difficult moments. My favorite are the actors that come in like, I know you're a beginning therapist and everything, but how is this helping me? Or, just like some art.
Yes.
And then they give you like, okay, what's the practice? And anyway, so they're great guys. So this whole kind of community developed, and Scott Miller's great, and Daryl Chow, that are just trying to figure out. And it's like, that's why I'm really curious. We haven't talked. I remember a couple of years ago, you sitting on my couch over there and a practice, you'd be like, yes, of course. And so I'd be so fascinated to see how you've incorporated it into your actual training, because I'm trying to figure out ways to, but this is all, this is a frontier. We're figuring out what works. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's a piece that I think is really important to understand is one, this is a frontier, and there hasn't been a lot of spaces where we're really able to, or people have been thinking about, how do you apply these principles to therapy, which requires two people at least, or groups. How do you do this? Wait, what? And then also, how do you break down these incredibly complex moments into a single skill that you're practicing? And I think both are challenging.
It's really hard.
And so one is just know the research is still new, and there's lots of research being done right now on, are there types of deliberate practice that have better outcomes than other types? And the cards are still out on that a little bit. We do know no matter how you're doing it, it makes a difference. And hopefully we learn more and more and more about how to make it better. And I remember that moment on your couch, because I realized what you were talking about was what I had already been doing.
Yes, I saw you go, what?
I was like, wait, I used to, when I was an intern, I would audio tape sessions with my client's permission and then play back moments where I wish I had said something different, and just played the audio and then said the different thing.
I've never heard somebody say that, and I love you.
Like, that was how I did my own supervision for myself, because I could feel like the supervision I was getting, I had a lovely supervisor who created beautiful, safe, deep environment for me, but I could feel
that's different.
That there was a need that I had in terms of skill that had a gap.
Yes.
In that space.
It's skilled. Okay, so a couple things for now. I mean, one, just to draw this point home, because now it's talking about how to use, if you do have supervision, they do even call it in the deliberate practice, it's not about getting a supervisor, it's about getting a skills coach.
Right.
Supervisors have other things, ethics and your trick, planning the case and all that. But if you have a skills coach, you can record your sessions, which they're obviously very into in the deliberate practice. And you can go and say, okay, can you just point me to some deficits that could work? Not, you have to use negative language, but just my growth edges.
Right.
Opportunities for growth. Okay. So, and then can you not only tell me what they are, but train me, show me how to train in that. any other, like a piano teacher knows how to train a student. They have all sorts of exercises they could show you. Like that's
Right.
all other fields, coaches, they know the drills, they know the thing, they know this skill, and we're going to learn it this way. So this is kind of, in some ways, it's like one of those like, oh yeah, it's like, duh, like how have we not been asking this question? But there are people training to be DP coaches, or just get someone you trust, but see if you can form with them. Okay, tell me specifically, what am I trying to do there? You're trying to use more limbic language, or you're trying to whatever. Okay, got it. And what does that look like? Give me an example. Okay, I think I got the example. Okay, now I'm going to use that piece of tape maybe I showed you. And when I'm by myself, I'm just going to see if I can practice that.
Right.
We'll practice it with your coach and get feedback, and then make tweaks or whatever.
Right.
But it's because otherwise it's basically like, if you could imagine having a piano coach or teacher or whatever, and it would be what supervision generally would be like if I did a performance, not even practice, performance, and then came back and told them about it.
Yeah.
And we just talked about it. Or
right. Totally. It's so slow down, because I love it when you use this metaphor. And I think it really drives the difference home between some of how we're thinking about how to train and how to support ourselves in skills. And there's a real difference. And I love the theory. I'm not saying anything bad about the lecture.
I love theory.
I love theory. I love talking about ethics. I love talking about, how do I handle myself in an power role in the room? Let's talk all about that. That's great. It's just not the same thing.
Yes, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. And there's this thing that's missing. And I love your metaphor. So could you slow down and say the piano metaphor again?
Yes.
I just want to make sure people really get this.
Okay, so if it were like what we do in supervision, we'd go off and do a performance, or whether alone or with someone, we play, well, with somebody, because we were usually seeing clients. That would be like akin to the pianist actually.
The audience is there.
The audience is there. Yes, that's
You went out. You went to do a performance.
Full stress. You probably weren't in learning mode. You were in stress mode, probably. Anyway, so you come, and then you talk to your piano teacher about how you think you did. I think I was a little uneven. I think I did this. The audience clapped, or they didn't clap, or whatever. And then you'd have a theory about, maybe how pianos work, or something you could talk about.
Or you can even talk about the importance of relaxing your knuckles.
Yeah. Or maybe that note was wrong. Try, whatever. But you don't have a piano in front of you, and you're not like, play for me right now, and then try it this way. Okay, good. I want you to practice just that section. I want you to practice rhythm by doing it odd and then even, and really breaking it down. There's something really powerful to think about. Oh, cool. Like, what if we took that as our example? Like, we have lots of examples, all sorts of other professional training. Even like learning to be pilots, they do simulation first, right? They have it. Okay, so we could use videotapes. I mean, there's a good ethical case to be made for using videotapes for a while with people before we even put them on real clients, that they're making their mistakes not on people.
Yes.
And then we just kind of keep, videotaping, getting feedback, and practicing, so we can either practice the basics or our growth edge. And so both are going to be great. But if we can figure out this thing is where I'm really struggling. I really struggle with not getting impatient with my clients. This would be more of an intro one, but like not getting impatient with my clients when they don't just go deep, or they don't, when they topic switch, and then whatever, and I don't know how to bring them back, or just kind of focus in on that. And then we even, if you really want to get into the detail of it, with the materials that Tony and Alex are putting out and things like that, you try to find the right level of challenge. Or actually, you gave a great example when you said, if you want, you can do this version or this version or this. You're giving people like levels of difficulty. So that's because you want to be, and I'm sure you could say more about this from a brain state, and I've heard you say a lot about this from a brain state, the right level of challenge. You want to be activated, but not in a freeze.
Right.
You're not going to be learning if you're like overwhelmed.
Exactly. Not enough stress, you won't learn anything at all. Too much stress, you're going to go into all your defenses. You're going to be in overwhelm. You are not in learning state. Go ahead and take a break.
Exactly. So funny. In the deliberate practice guys, I love Tony and Alex because they're so playful. So they'll have these like little goofy YouTube videos that they do as like breaks. Like it's stressful. Okay. Like when you're doing sports, you kind of like warm up and then warm down. I don't know. I can't remember what, but you like, I'm very athletic. You cool down.
Yeah. Cool down.
They have cool down videos, it's like, just do something playful, have a break, laugh, like train your nervous system to be able to go and stress. And then, okay, come over here. And so all of that's actually can be kind of part of the training.
Mm-hmm.
Holding on to this like coaching the body metaphor, they talk about stamina.
Right.
You know, it's like how long can I watch this video? They do sometimes a very emotionally activating videos,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I just start small and then I increase my. But can I watch it and then sort of like stay aware of my body or aware of what's happening in my mind at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
This is a really interesting skill practice. And how Tony teaches it is you just watch it. And I love when he's demoing it. He just has his like headphones on. He's like, okay, I just had a spike of shame. Now some anxiety, kind of fluttering here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now a nice feeling, you know. And he just kind of he keeps and he's just saying it out loud. So he would say it out loud privately in his own, you know, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just saying, because it's a mindfulness practice. But and I think there's a lot of like, oh, therapists should do mindfulness practices. But again, it's not the state dependent learning. It's like we're doing mindfulness practice. We like literally make it quiet and peaceful, and like
Right.
and like it's not quiet or peaceful in the room when we're trying to be mindful. So like I love that idea. I think that's so fascinating. Like bring up your client that you have difficulty with and practice doing mindfulness, watching them.
That's right. So remember you all in stair level 1 where you were seeing those videos and we had different levels of difficulty. What Tori's talking about right now is that video where you just name what type of experience you're having inside first.
So you're doing this one.
Oh, feeling, body sensation, thought, image. Oh, history image from me, huh? Right? And so when you all are doing that, and then you can stack it and just notice, like, oh, first I can just notice, oh, what all is happening. And then I can notice, oh, what is that spurring me to do in the room? Is that actually helpful for my person? Could I watch it, spike me into wanting to do something, and then put a pause?
Yeah.
Right? So when you're doing in stair level 2, we have containing boundary practices. When you're doing those boundary practices, what I'm going to encourage you to do is just notice, oh, can I have a moment of wanting to do a thing and then stop myself?
Yeah.
Because just being able to have that skill is such a helpful skill to have in your back pocket when you're doing therapy.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love this one. So it's true. We were on your couch and there's this moment where I went, oh, other people are doing this too. I'm not totally alone. And then I went in and looked and I realized, oh gosh, I could do this better. Because when I read the research, not even the teaching piece, no, I could do it better for my own deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Because the truth was, I was inventing the wheel kind of on my own. And I realized all sorts of mistakes I'd been making in my deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Mistakes like I had been trying to practice too much all at once. I hadn't broken it down into only one thing.
Yeah.
Mistakes like not being thoughtful about whether or not I was in my window.
Mm-hmm.
Separating out the learning goal from the growth edge. So like learning goal could be catch lability and ask what happened. Mm-hmm. Growth edge is perception of lability. I keep missing it.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Right.
Right. Or it could be, oh, I perceive it, but then I think I'm wrong and I shame myself and then I don't offer it. Yeah. Oh, so now my deliberate practice is actually, I'm going to start with an intrapersonal deliberate practice and start just greeting the shame with kindness, greeting the shame with of courseness. Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, you're worried you might have that wrong. Oh, okay. Oh, you're worried you might interrupt them and it might be too painful. Oh, okay. So first, just greeting it inside. Yeah. And then when I'm ready, go back and do another practice where, oh, that happens and it's so habitual that I'm greeting it well, I now can say a thing out loud.
It's like you've changed your prediction almost of what's going to happen next. Like you've done it so many times. You're like, oh, I know I'm going to be nice to myself, so I don't have to worry about it and get upset and I'm on.
Right, totally.
Consolidation.
It's actually reconciliation is happening for myself in my therapist role while I'm doing my DPs.
Can I share one thing that was my version of learning? Because I think this is something I did for a year. and again, this was like 15 years ago before I knew about deliberate practice, but it was toward the end of my training. And I had learned enough to know, I don't even know if I had the word experiential therapy, but that it's good to ask about experience, which, by the way, there's really interesting research on. That's like one of the few things research has shown is if we can get people in their experience, talking from their experience rather than about their experience. There's something called the client experiencing scale that I actually like to show my clients, my students, just to say, look, if you're not doing all this fancy stuff, if all you're doing is helping people look inward and note what's going on inside, you are doing what our field considers like top. Like we're going even beyond that and doing like way crazy stuff, but like you're doing really good. Like you're already way above, like average, whatever. You're probably getting amazing outcomes, even if just that one learning, which is kind of it's simple kind of. I mean, I know it's hard to sometimes learn simple things, but how I learned it was when I was, a long time ago, is I had a supervisor who did a really good exercise with me, which is I wrote the transcript of a session. And then after everything I said, she had me look at it and say, okay, does this turn the client away from their experience or toward their experience? Which was super simple. And it's actually kind of simple to tell. Okay, was I asking like about the story, or was I asking, how is it to tell me the story? And then for a year, I just went in with like, every time I open my mouth, it's just like, it was that one thing I was practicing. I wasn't practicing, I'm sure I was practicing something else, but like, mainly I was just like, that was my determination. Every time they say something, I'm going to ask a question that guides them to be curious about their experience. And that's all I do. And now I've added things, like you said, picking up lots of, you can add on top. But I think that's such a foundational piece. And I really lean into that with my students of like, when we do our dyads, I'm like, just stick with that. Like we can do, but just learn that really, really well. And it's kind of a deliberate practicing, I guess I did early on. And it was so easy. And then over, last 15 years or whatever, I just started collecting. So I have like pages of experiential questions that I give my students just to practice saying them out loud. Just like put them in your vocabulary or something, like just get comfortable asking questions like, oh, as I said, what was it like to hear me say that? Or they just kind of turn again and again and again toward experience. But I have a question for you then, because that's cool. I mean, that's been easy to incorporate. Like, okay, that's a core thing,
Right. I would call that in our basic skills. So, so there's like categories of how you could separate out, like, what is it we're actually going to be practicing?
Yeah.
Basic skills.
Yep.
Right. You've got some sort of like growth edge for you personally. That's a different thing. And then I would add in, when I'm with students and when I'm with myself, and I don't know if there's research on this, but you probably know better than me. I know there's andragogical research on it in other spaces, but I don't know about DP4 therapists in particular. But actually doing deliberate practice on what went well.
Oh yeah, that's such a good, I don't know that there's research, but I've heard, say more.
This andragogically, so that's just the study of adult learning. What we're seeing is slowing down and making a celebration of what went well and being really hyper specific with yourself about what you did that made it go so well. And then trying to practice doing that little element again. Is actually one of the best ways to learn and to improve.
We love, that's how they were created, which I love about our theories. They watch tape, break through. Okay, what did we do? But what I also love about that, I was there's one of the ISTDP faculty is really into deliberate practice. And what he does, he's like, if this is too shamey for you at the beginning, like, because we have to, that's another not fun part of it, is looking at our weaknesses. He'll have people watch, what is it? I think he has them watch videotape without any sound, just they're on their client. And he looks for moments where they like take a deep breath, I think, or some cue that they're like a little like something's going on. You'd probably be better at figuring out what those cues would be. But he just has them pause and then listen to what they just said before that and learn from it. Like you probably said something good, right? But you're not good, but like or deepening right there. And you can tell by the client's nonverbals, and then just appreciate that and learn from that. Like, oh, that led to this deepening that I saw nonverbally in my client. And like, so you can find these moments that are like these gems of like, oh, a good impact.
Not that I had a good impact.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And to practice that again and again and again, because then you're going to be teaching your brain, oh, you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I can do that
That's
then.
actually easy for me. I just didn't know.
I already did it.
Yeah, yeah.
You want me to do that more? Oh, okay. Right. So when you do, whether it's inside of that growth edge and all of a sudden you make a breakthrough,
Mhm.
stop and do 3 practices at least with just that breakthrough moment.
Oh, nice.
Or you can find a moment that already went really great and do 3 or 4 practices with that moment. But what you want to do is really look at this is, and again, I'm pulling from research from other places because it hasn't been done in therapy.
Oh, yeah, right.
What we can do is say, oh, what was possible in that moment was I was really kind to myself when I was in shame.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the thing that changed something for me. Oh, okay. Well, I'll just find shame and be kind to it.
Mhm.
Oh, that good. Let's try to cue it again.
Yeah.
And again, and again, and again, and again.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I love hearing you. Okay, so here's my question then.
Yeah.
I think, okay, so there are some challenges, I think, with deliberate practice. There's certainly some challenges. There's some fears that people have that it may make it feel too mechanistic or technical or something. Although
Mm.
one thing that someone I heard, Daryl Chow, I heard said is it's principles over protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we're like meticulous, but okay, but at the same time, you have to. It is a little bit, I don't say reductionistic, but you are trying to break it down into smaller bits.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern isn't so much that that'll make it mechanical or something, but there are a lot of bits. I'm just curious how you like I think the one way I saw that was like, okay, I'm just going to really teach this core thing, and then I've had some helpers in my student group try to like do breakout groups with deliberate practice. We're like trying to figure it out together. Like, okay, what are these skills and what are micro skills that we can look at? And it sounds like you're way ahead of me on it. But what are you finding in terms of like, are you just doing as many skills as you can? Like, or like, is every time you teach a skill, you try to, how is that becoming manageable for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, all of this. I think I can feel the question. Let me articulate it back and see. It feels like 2 questions in one. One is, how are we breaking these complex things into the principle in a single skill that's practicable?
That's a good, yes. I hadn't,
That's part of what I hear you
yeah,
asking.
that's part of my question. Yeah. Hmm.
And then the other part that I hear you asking is something like, okay, yeah, but then once you get that small breakdown, what do you do to like string it back together so it becomes this thing that's fluid in the room? Am I getting that
I
part?
mean, the second part was really, I don't know, I kind of answered it myself. Maybe it's just that there's so many potential,
Sure.
but maybe that's okay. And then we
What
just,
if that's okay?
that's okay.
Actually, I just love, and this is my own humility and awe and wonder coming in. Um, there are that many.
Yeah, that is
And
actually,
this job is that hard.
it is.
It's just that hard.
I know, it really is.
And
Yeah.
I'm a complex system and my client's a complex system. And if I'm in a couples world, I have 2 other complex systems in front of me. And then there's a complex system in each relationship.
Yeah.
And then there's a complex system in the bigger group relation. So if I'm in couples therapy, for example, there are 7 complex systems in the room.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah. And how,
And when I'm with a group running a workshop, that think about the
yeah.
right.
Wow.
And Chopin is hard to play. It's
Yes.
hard to play well. And
Yes.
maybe it's a little bit more finite than what we're talking about, but ultimately, I think it's practicable.
I think
I really do.
can and you just actually helped make something conscious for me. Um, which is that argument, well, maybe deliberate practice is going to make it too mechanical. It's actually maybe the opposite. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
have something in your muscle memory now, that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to think about it.
That's right.
And then that frees you up to be more present and flowy and creative because the
Mm-hmm.
technical stuff is like kind of taken care of and it's just like, more fluid.
Right.
So trust, maybe there's a moment of trusting our systems to make it more organic and like, yes, when we practice it, it's going to be more focused on, did I say the thing? Did I do this? Like they break into these 3 objectives. Did I reflect back the emotion accurately, and did I deepen it? And they break, these little things that maybe more practicing it does lean us into a little bit more reductionistic thinking. But if we get good at that, then that probably just automates, like it goes a little bit in the back, and then we can, if anything, it probably makes us more fluid and creative.
That's right.
Conscious.
I think that's right, because I think it's very similar to walking up a staircase. You have kids, you watch them learn to walk up staircases.
Mm-hmm.
That took a lot of practice of teeny tiny baby skills.
Yep, exactly.
Now
together.
Now they can dance on a staircase while playing tag.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Yes. Yes, that's right.
Right? And there were 1,000 little skills that were then stacked and strung together. So I think it's a couple of pieces for me. One is, did you break it down into a skill that's going to be helpful? And what we talk about is, how do we know a skill is going to be helpful? Is this skill going to help this person be in relationship with themselves while having a little bit of activation and a little bit of regulation at the same time?
Yeah.
So we're using those brain principles, right? And we're saying, this particular skill is helpful. So let's take a single piece, for example, a big thing, and then we're going to break it down into a tiny thing. So a big thing is, we're going to be in the reality that there's a power dynamic in the room.
Yeah.
That if I do not address in ways that elicit feedback, I'm not going to know how I'm affecting my person. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to know. Mm-hmm. Probably. Mm-hmm. Right? And so, I'm going to create a space where I'm going to contract for how we're doing this work so that I can create a lot of invitations for you to tell me when I asked a question that was helpful in you connecting to yourself and when it wasn't helpful connecting to yourself. I want that feedback. Right. Okay. So I've decided that. Well, there's micro skills involved.
Yeah.
Could you practice making an invitation while hanging out and knowing you could be deeply wrong in what you just did? Mm-hmm. So can you get that, I don't know the impact.
Yeah.
And from that space, right? From that space, now could I ask, what did happen? I asked you this question like this, bop, 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 bop. And then there was a breath and a look like that, but I have no idea what just happened. What happened? Right? So, okay, there's micro skills. 1, I caught something shifted in the room. 2, I stepped into my humility.
Right.
3, I elicited feedback. 4, I elicited it in such a specific way that I recalled the moment. Okay, those are 4 different micro skills I could practice.
That's great, Jules.
So then I might say, this week I'm going to practice some of those micro skills, or even over this month, I'm going to practice the micro skills. And I'm going to start stacking them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to practice this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. And then I'm going to go and see, is that changing in the room? How's my practice going? And then I can assess, am I doing it in a way that's actually shifting things like I want it to shift?
Yeah.
And one of the ways I could tell is many of my clients are giving me more feedback at the end of this month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been super helpful. I actually caught when I got it wrong a lot more often. Cha-ching! My skill is working.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's happening for you, Tori, as I talk about, we could break them down and then start stacking them back up?
It's really exciting because I actually would love it gets my creative, my juices flowing, because it's just so, we get busy, and it's been on one of my things, like, okay, I need to just like map all this out. But I have like my 4 quadrants that I teach my students: contact and clarity, and then coherence and completion. And like we're doing any comments like one of those 4. And so then we could break it down to each one. Okay, then what kind of what's needed? Is it more activation or more kind of like regulation? And, and then break that down into possibly techniques, specific things you could say. ways of being, it's like, it's a lot, but it's not infinite.
It's not infinite. It can be used in infinite ways because once you have the skills so fluid in your muscle memory, so like it's like the skills are there creating a basket of support.
Yeah.
So that your creativity and intuition is just dancing with your people.
Yeah.
While you happen to be using really good skills.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing when my students, I mean, sometimes get discouraged by how many like choice points, like there's things we're tracking and then we're learning, okay, is that what kind of part, whatever map, like any theory has a map that's pretty complex. Sometimes I just remind them of like how intelligent we are. And if you compare it to anything else we know, like if you live in a town, even if it's not a big city, like, so many like intersections and you know what I mean? Like, and oh yeah, I remember because to turn right here because it's gonna be slightly shorter because the traffic comes this way. Like we can map actually a lot and remember, oh yeah, I've been at this intersection. I think when you're starting, it can be like, what? There's that many choice points or moments that, but if you if you've gone around the block, it's like you actually can memorize and learn. Oh yeah, this open the file of what I know about if I said something that is off. Okay, I've been here before, and this is and so just remembering like we have amazing brains. We are great at complexity actually.
We're actually really, really good at complexity.
Yeah.
And when the skills you're practicing are based on just a principle of how does the shift happen, then the skill's going to be there for you.
In fact, I think if I could just ping on what I think I'm getting from you and from this moment, if I could just summarize it, we're great at the emergence, complexity, emergence, and we don't learn that way. Only that way.
Say it again. Okay. Say it again. This is so huge.
Yes. We can, once we learn the individual pieces and we have them in their own right, we have a relationship, we have clarity around them, we got that neural network or whatever, we got all our questions, we practice it, we got it in our mind, we have all those bits, then we can emerge into this like creative, it's unique as a fingerprint and something new that's never happened before can happen.
Right.
And if we're just only talking at this level and showing full tapes, full set, which I do, but full sessions where it's like, there's probably 100 things you could learn and it emerged this way, We only teach that. That's very inspiring and there's a lot you can pick up.
Well, and there's a ton you could learn about, when I watched that emergence, what would have helped me move 1 centimeter closer to that? There, you just grabbed this next skill to practice.
That's what you've honed in on. Oh my God, I noticed that they did that. And then take that one thing. You're going to write that one thing. Yeah.
That's right. So good. Watch the big tape. It's helpful, but you're not going to gain the skills that help this happen by only watching this.
Yeah.
What you do is you grab a thing and you go, okay, I'll practice it. And I love what you were saying. This is why I do a lot of demo, like small groups and demo days and stuff like that, because I think that experiential learning, I know you've run into this all the time too, Tori. There's no way for me to make a classroom that is going to meet your exquisite need in this moment and the person next to you's exquisite need in this moment. It's not possible. I can't do it. What I can do is show you a thing, and then you can trust that tug inside you that showed you that's the thing I need to learn. So if you want a map of like, here's the thing I need, go learn experientially, because your own system will tell you, that's the one. Yeah.
I think that's really helpful in me. I love hearing you transmit that because that's where I can sometimes torture myself as a teacher. It's like, and I just try to bring in lots of opportunities, lots of ways of learning, but that reminder of like, and I'm throwing a lot at you. So there's lots of options and lots of pieces so that you can be like, I really learned through that metaphor. Or when she showed that tape, or like, I really learned through hearing what you actually say, or I learned through the visual, and then like people find their way to engage with it and not feel like they need to take in everything. Because if it could be overwhelming if they have to take in everything.
Totally. It will be, right? And that's true actually for this tape that you've been watching now, is we talked about a lot of different pieces around deliberate practice. And there were probably nuggets that were just right for you.
Mm-hmm.
Take those and don't worry about trying to remember everything we're talking about.
Right.
What nugget is like the right nugget for you given this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do between you and you to support your next DP because of that nugget you got?
Yeah.
Sometimes I went through this really hard time. And it was a typical time. I've been through many of them now, but it was my first time through the deep, deep humiliation, self-doubt. Oh no, I chose the wrong profession. I think I suck at this.
Mm-hmm.
And I left my DP for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I got worse. Shocking. And I had like a moment of uh, family financial necessity,
Mm-hmm.
ethical awakening, like Jules, if you're gonna either don't do the job
Or do it.
or commit to doing the job well.
Right.
But it was like major shame attack and just really hard. And what I had to do to get back into DP was actually to deliberate practice saying yes to DP. So I stacked.
Love that.
Y'all, I just stacked saying yes to turning on the tape and being with the terror and shame attack I had. And then I would walk away and then I would do just that. And I didn't do any DP other than just being with myself through it.
Yeah.
And again, and again, and again, and again, because I had figured out that this changes if we commit to deep practice, it changes how we can serve our people.
Jules, you saying that, I mean, I know everyone that probably in this class loves you, so they don't need, but I just, that is so special that you have that kind of courage and strength. That is something that I can't resonate. I mean, we're so similar on like our geeking out and everything, but I'm like, oh my God, this, and not just that you have that, but, and maybe this is a whole other conversation because this actually takes us in a totally different direction than deliberate practice. But I bet all your students get something just subcortical to subcortical from you that you model that. I mean, they do talk about modeling and deliberate practice and that being really important, but just like that's like that's like almost a spiritual, profound thing. You know, it's like you telling that story. First of all, it's so normalizing of other therapists that hit that and they're like, oh, Jules also could, if Jules, who I really look up to, could feel this is the wrong profession, like what a gift for them.
I don't know if you caught this. That was the first time it happened for me. The most recent time it happened, I'm just used to it now, so it doesn't hit me quite as bad. It was like 3 weeks ago.
Oh my God, that's hysterical and is like such a show of like, yeah, we have to not take that too seriously. Like Jules, who's a master therapist, is still wondering if she's good enough to even be a therapist.
Totally. All the time.
You're so great. But just that you would said, okay, you broke it down to a small enough piece that was at your right level, even if it was just to think about doing deliberate practice.
Yeah.
And with the
and practice thinking about it again and thinking about it again and deal with the feelings so that I could commit to the deliberate practice. So you can even do, like maybe the seed you take away is, oh, I'm going to do DP about maybe trying DP.
Yeah. And seeing what brings up. And absolutely. Absolutely. Or recording sessions, you know,
right.
Seeing how do I want to talk to my clients about recording sessions and
Yep. Or how do I ask my friend to do role plays with me?
Yeah.
Because that's terrifying, but it's less terrifying than asking my clients to record, which I can't do yet.
Yeah. Which is the next step. Yeah.
When folks are wanting to train with you, you did a therapy wisdom course. What's the name of that one?
So that one's becoming a master therapist. So if you look under Academy of Therapy Wisdom for Tori Olds, you will find my course. And, you know, it was something I did with my sister, which is a lot of fun. We were raised by two shrinks. So my first memory is at 3 years old, role playing a couple therapists. My sister made a couple.
So you have core memories that are all about being a therapist one day.
And
And
true.
you've brought that joy to people. So if people want to learn more from you, they can look
My
there.
therapeutism. And then look, you can look at my YouTube channel. I have a lot of free stuff on my YouTube channel. One
Yeah,
about deliberate practice and IFS and AEDP and coherence therapy series. And one new series is just about the experiential therapy movement, its history, its science, but the memory consolidation, all the science of it, plus its history and how it kind of emerged and what the main theories are. And I think there's a lot packed into that series.
absolutely. And I love your commitment to accessibility and open access to your brain and thinking. And I just love that you're doing all that. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, I learned
Yeah.
a lot from our conversation.
I always learn so much every time I talk to you. Thank you so much for being here. You're such a gift to me and students everywhere in the field. And
Thank you.
I just love your work.
But, yeah, you too.